hurricane so far, Fiona, this week, and it's still out there in the Atlantic. Strongest one, Category 4 as of this morning. Dr. Jim Seibert joining us in studio. I mean, we went from 0 to 60 in our hurricane season this month.
You know, what's interesting too with Fiona, though, it really has never been a threat to like the mainland United States.
Right.
So as we've been watching this, you know, obviously the potential energy's been out there. It hit Puerto Rico, hit Dominican Republic, and now it's heading out into the Atlantic more. But for us, it's really changing as far as we're going to watch that one go away because we have something new to talk about.
And a lot of people are talking about this. Invest 98. It's an investigated wave, a tropical wave that is way down by Trinidad, Tobago, way down here in the Windward Islands. Dr. Jim, it's very far south, and the satellite representation shows it's very weak and disorganized at the moment.
Yeah, so it's one of those situations where there really isn't anything there yet.
Right.
But the computer models actually started picking up on this several days ago, and they're very consistent, have been still consistent as far as coming into the Caribbean. And once it gets into the Caribbean, well, the water's warm, the upper level winds are pretty light, and so you put it all together and it is most likely going to organize.
And I put the rain forecast on here because folks in Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, has just had upwards of 30 inches of rain from Fiona. You know, this one's a lot farther south, and you can kind of see the projected track on the American model taking it through the ABC Islands, Southern Caribbean, and eventually to the Western Caribbean.
Well, and here's where it's interesting. So at first, you kind of see how the spaghetti plot gets very wide, right? So it gets wide right here in the middle, and a lot of that has to do with how far south that it is. But notice as we get here into about the middle, going into the weekend here, that's where everything starts to come together. Now, why would that happen? Well, the steering currents that we look at, typically when we're talking about forecasts for hurricanes, if you have strong high pressure, strong fronts, you know, big features, it's easier to forecast. When you have weak features where you're not really sure, is it going to go in, is it going to go out? And in this case, as this gets closer to the Gulf of Mexico, we've got stronger features with the weather patterns. Therefore, it looks like we're going to see a better chance for this to organize, and it gives us a better idea where it might go.
Yeah, the biggest question still remains, you know, this is an area where it gets more moist, the water's very warm, and then where does it go from there? How fast does it go? If it goes slower, more time to strengthen. And then all those possibilities into the Gulf, you know, a window more to the north-northwest or more north-northeast. It's still way early to tell.
It's way too early, but we know we're going to have the high pressure to the east. We know we're going to have high pressure to the west after a front comes on through. And the indications are somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico. At this point, it looks a little more like the eastern Gulf of Mexico is where it's going to start to slide out. Now, keep in mind, we haven't had a big storm in the Caribbean. We haven't had a big storm in the Gulf of Mexico. We've had some minor things. So the water is not only warm, but that water is warm at depth because we haven't had much mixing. And that's why we think this is going to become pretty strong pretty fast.
That's a good point. The depth of the warm water is something that we watch. But a lot of agreement, like you mentioned, to the south of Jamaica through the end of the weekend. Monday and Tuesday, key days. Once that starts to move into the Western Caribbean, I stopped it here on Tuesday at noon on the American model. And you can see, obviously, the intensity, but there's Miami, and then it's just, again, all open based on position of the highs and where this thing can go.
And at this point, we really can't rule anything out in the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, this whole area all the way towards Florida. It's also possible that it could take a sharper right-hand turn, which would take it more towards the Bahamas. So it really is kind of early. But if you're kind of take everything and take the averages, at this point, it still looks like there's a higher risk for the eastern Gulf of Mexico, at least at this point anyway.
It does, and that would be between the time frame, I would say Wednesday of next week to Friday. Maybe somewhere around Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of next week that you really want to pay attention to.
We think it'll probably enter into the Gulf by about Wednesday. But because we expect it to be a pretty large storm system, whatever it is, that we'll start feeling those impacts immediately. And again, the Gulf of Mexico is not that large, right? So it only takes about a day for it to get across. So that's why we are trying to give you that heads up, anybody along the Gulf Coast.
Yeah, so again, still about a week away. Trust your good, solid sources. Dr. Jim Seibert, the team here at WeatherNation, just check in with us and other good sources. Be careful what you see out there on social media, and again, take everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah, absolutely. Use those trusted sources because there will be, on social media, you see somebody might take one image of one model and say, you know, this is what's going to happen. We just don't know that yet, but we will have higher confidence as we get closer.